I was 30 years old when I realized the sound that haunted my sleep was not sirens or trains or the neighbor's loud TV. It was the faint buzz of my husband's second phone. Back then, I did not call it that. Back then, it was just a weird vibration I heard sometimes in the middle of the night, a low insect hum beneath the familiar symphony of our apartment, the fridge kicking on, the pipes knocking, the muffled music from the guy upstairs who thought 1 a.m. was the perfect time for 90s R&B. I would jolt awake in the dark, heart racing, staring at the ceiling fan slowly turning shadows across our bedroom walls. Beside me, Terrell slept on his stomach, one arm flung across my waist, his body heavy and warm. In the dim amber glow from the streetlight outside, I would trace the line of his shoulders with my eyes and tell myself I had imagined it. That night in early autumn, the air felt thick and sleepy, the city wrapped in that in-between season where everything smells like damp leaves and hot concrete at the same time. I lay there listening to the faint buzz again, low and insistent, coming from the direction of his side of the bed. I lifted his arm from my waist carefully and slid out from under him. My bare feet found the cool wood floor. The bedroom was a soft blur of shapes, the outline of our dresser, the pile of laundry I kept promising myself I would fold, the faint glow of the digital alarm clock painting numbers on the wall. His regular phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark. The buzzing came again, from lower. I knelt and reached under the bed, my fingers brushing dust bunnies, an old sock, the corner of a box. Then they found it, a smooth rectangle of metal and glass, warm from use. I pulled it out into the weak streetlight filtering through the blinds. The screen lit up at my touch, casting a pale glow on my hands. Unknown number. 3 missed calls. A few text previews from a thread simply saved as her. My chest tightened, even though nothing on the screen said anything incriminating right then. Just an initial. A heart emoji. Are you awake? I told myself it could be anything. A cousin. A friend. Something to do with the little side gig he had picking up trash overnight at the stadium on weekends. But the truth is, my stomach had been in a knot long before that second phone buzzed. Terrell and I had been married 3 years. I had known him since my early 20s, back when he worked the register at the corner store by my mama's place, flashing that lazy grin at every customer but letting it linger on me just a little longer. He was the kind of dark-skinned man my aunties warned me about and secretly liked, tall, easy laugh, eyes that seemed to see straight through people. When we first started dating, he made me feel like I had finally been chosen for the lead role in my own life. He would say that he loved my ambition, that he was proud of the way I hustled at the beauty counter, turning powder and gloss into rent money. He cooked for me after my long shifts, rubbed my feet while I complained about customers who thought my hands were theirs to touch. But somewhere around year 2 of marriage, things shifted. He lost his job at the warehouse when the company downsized. He said it was temporary, that he would pick up shifts where he could. He did odd jobs, seasonal work, the overnight trash gig. But the money never seemed to stretch the way he said it would. I picked up more hours. My legs ached from standing all day. I started coming home too tired to talk, too tired to fight. Bills piled up. His pride shrank. And then, the secret slipped in. At first, it was small things, receipts he tossed too quickly, an envelope from a bank I did not recognize, a new hoodie I knew he had not bought with money we actually had. He would tell me not to worry, that he was handling it, that he would never let us sink. I wanted to believe him. But that buzzing phone in my hands made it hard. I pressed the side button with my thumb and the screen went dark again. I stared at my reflection in the black glass, brown skin faintly silvered by streetlight, hair twisted up in a scarf, eyes wide and tired. I did not look like the kind of woman who checked phones. I put it back where I found it. In the morning, I fried eggs and turkey bacon in our small kitchen, the window cracked open to let out the smell. The sky outside was pale gray, the kind that made the whole city look like it had been washed in chalk. The sizzling sounded too loud in the cramped space. Terrell shuffled in, shorts low on his hips, eyes half closed. He kissed my cheek, his lips warm against my skin. He said that it smelled good. He asked if I had to work late again. I nodded and told him yes. The store was rolling out holiday sets early that year, and my manager had me scheduled until closing. He rubbed his face and said that he might hit up his cousin for some roofing work that afternoon. He said roofing money was good money, if you were not scared of heights. I watched his face while he talked. He did not look away. His eyes were steady. His hands moved easily as he reached for a plate, as he poured himself coffee, as he scrolled idly through his regular phone. The second phone was nowhere in sight. I told myself that if he was hiding something, it would show on his face. That was the lie I chose that morning. That Sunday, we drove to his mother's for dinner. His mama lived in the same small brick house on the south side she had raised him in, the chain-link fence leaning slightly, the porch sagging just enough to complain when you stepped on it. The afternoon sun sat low and gold in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. The air smelled like fried chicken, fabric softener, and the faint sweetness of the plum tree in her yard. Inside, the house was full of sound, the clatter of pots in the kitchen, the murmur of the TV in the living room, his sister Tiana's laughter, high and sharp. Miss Denise, because I had never gotten comfortable calling her Mama, stood at the stove in a faded floral house dress, stirring greens in a big pot. The steam rose around her, softening the lines in her dark face. She said we were late, and she asked if traffic had been bad or if we had just been moving slow. I kissed her cheek and told her it was my fault. Work had run over because someone quit mid-shift. She said that those department stores worked you like a mule for pennies, and she shook her head. Tiana leaned against the counter, scrolling on her phone, long acrylic nails clicking. She said that if I moved out of makeup and into fragrance, I would make more commission. Then she rolled her eyes, saying that I probably stayed where I was because I liked talking to people too much. I laughed, but my mind was elsewhere. I watched how Terrell slipped his regular phone into his pocket as soon as we stepped in, how his eyes flicked quickly to mine and then away. I watched how Miss Denise's gaze lingered on him just a second too long, as if checking for cracks. After dinner, we all sank into the sagging couch in the living room, plates balanced on our knees, the chatter blending with the crowd noise from the football game on TV. At some point, Terrell went outside to take a call. He said it was his cousin about Monday's job. I sat there, listening to the muffled timbre of his voice floating in from the porch, words indistinct but tone familiar. My stomach tightened. Miss Denise glanced at the front door, then at me. She said he had a lot on his mind. She said men did not always know how to talk about their stress. Her eyes were kind, but there was something guarded in them. I wondered, just for a second, if she knew more than she let on. I wondered if the women in his family had learned to pretend not to see what their men were doing to keep the peace. The thought sat heavy in my chest, like a stone at the bottom of a glass of water. I swallowed it and smiled. I was still the good wife that Sunday. But the sound of that buzzing phone stayed with me. It hummed beneath everything, beneath the conversations, beneath the way Terrell's hand sat on my thigh in church the next morning, beneath the way Miss Denise hugged me at the door and held on a second too long, like she was apologizing for something she did not say out loud. I did not know it yet, but I was standing at the edge of the kind of intrigue that does not explode all at once. It seeps in, slow as oil on old water, until everything you thought was solid starts to shine wrong under the light. The thing about intrigue is that it rarely shows itself with one big, dramatic gesture. It comes in fragments. In little paper clues and half-sentences, in the way someone's voice changes around certain people's names. For me, the second piece was a bank statement. It arrived on a Tuesday, folded neatly in an envelope from a bank we did not use. The logo was unfamiliar, the address line slightly off. It had my husband's name and our address, but a P.O. box listed in the corner. I found it wedged between a coupon pack and a church flyer in our mailbox, the thin paper cool under my fingers. The stairwell smelled faintly of someone's cooking, onions and garlic and something frying. Upstairs in the apartment, I dumped the rest of the mail on the counter and held the envelope up to the light. I could hear the shower running in the bathroom. Terrell had left early that morning for what he said was a temp job helping set up a convention center stage. He had come back sweaty and quiet, barely kissing me on his way to the bathroom, dropping his clothes in a heap on the floor. The water beat against the tile, a steady drum. I slid my finger under the flap and opened the envelope. Inside was a simple statement, black ink on white paper. Account holder, Terrell Porter. Savings account balance, low but not nothing. Recent transactions, a series of payments labeled monthly transfer, all the same amount, all going to the same account number. Beneath that, the description, child support disbursement. The room tilted slightly. I leaned against the counter, the laminate cool against my hip. I read it again, slower, as if the words might change on the second pass. They did not. Child support. My mind stuttered through possibilities. Maybe it was some mistake, an old account from before me that he had forgotten to mention. Maybe it was a misprint. Maybe it was some weird thing with his cousin's kid and they had used his name for something. Every maybe felt flimsier than the last. In the bathroom, the shower shut off. Water dripped. The curtain scraped along the rod. I folded the statement in half and slid it back into the envelope. I did not throw it away. I put it in the junk drawer instead, between a takeout menu and an old pair of scissors. Somewhere I could reach later. When he came out, steam following him, towel low on his hips, he looked relaxed. He said that he was starving and asked what we had to eat. I watched him, the way water beaded on his dark skin, the way he moved around the kitchen like he lived here, like everything made sense. My throat felt tight. I did not ask him then. I wanted to. The word sat on my tongue, prickling. But I also wanted, for a few more hours, to be the woman I had been before I opened that envelope. That evening, while he played a video game in the living room, his body slouched on the couch, the TV screen washing blue light over his face, I stood at the sink and washed dishes. The soapy water turned my fingers wrinkled. The smell of dish detergent and leftover food filled the small space. Miss Denise called. She said that she had some leftover greens and cornbread, and she asked if we wanted to come pick them up instead of letting them go to waste. I told her we might swing by. Her voice had that same guarded softness. As I hung up, I looked over at Terrell. He was laughing at something on the game, not at all aware of the shift in my gaze. The next day at work, I moved through the store like a ghost. I matched foundation shades, spritzed perfume onto test strips, smiled and nodded and told women they looked beautiful. Inside, my thoughts whirled around that phrase on the statement. Child support disbursement. There was no twist for me. No moment of shock where I could pretend I had never suspected him of bigger secrets. The second phone. The weird hours. The half-truths about money. They had all been pointing somewhere. Now I had paperwork. On my lunch break, instead of scrolling my phone in the break room, I stepped outside into the alley behind the store. The air smelled like garbage and cigarettes and the faint sweetness from the bakery next door. I called Tiana. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and suspicious. She said that it was the middle of the day and she asked if I was not supposed to be painting people's faces. I told her I had 15 minutes and I needed her to tell me the truth. The line went quiet for a second. Then she made this little sound, a tiny exhale that told me she already knew what I was about to ask. I asked her if she knew about Terrell having a child. There was a pause, the kind that stretches out and turns into its own answer. She said slowly that she did not think it was her place to say anything. That was enough. I hung up without explaining why my voice had gone cold. Sometimes, family intrigue is not about dramatic betrayals. Sometimes it is about who stays quiet and for how long. That Friday, I told Terrell I was going to my mama's for the weekend. My mama lived further out, in an old apartment complex that sat next to a strip mall with a beauty supply store and a laundromat. The air out there always smelled like dryer sheets and fried food. I packed a small bag and left after my shift, kissing him carefully on the lips before I went. He said that he would miss me and joked that he did not know how he would eat without me. His regular phone sat on the coffee table. The second one was not in sight. On the bus ride over, I stared out the window as the city blurred, corner stores, row houses, graffiti-tagged walls, a kid's basketball game in a cracked court. I thought about my father, a man I barely knew, a face I only saw in an old photo tucked in my mama's Bible. I thought about how he had drifted out of our lives when I was little, leaving my mama to pick up everything he dropped. I wondered if Terrell was made from the same mold or if he had carved himself into this shape all on his own. At my mama's, the apartment smelled like hair grease and incense. She hugged me tight at the door, her body soft and familiar. She said that it was good to see me. She asked if everything was all right, her eyes scanning my face like she could read the truth there. I told her I just needed a break. She did not push. That night, I lay on the old twin bed in my childhood room, the ceiling fan clicking above me. The wallpaper was long gone, replaced with chipped paint, but the shadows looked the same. The buzzing sound woke me just before dawn. Not from under the bed this time, but from my bag. I sat up, heart pounding. The room was dim, edges softened by the weak light seeping in around the blinds. My regular phone was on the nightstand, dark. The buzzing came again. I reached into my bag and pulled out the second phone. I had taken it from under our bed just before I left, sliding it into my bag while Terrell was in the shower. It was heavier than I expected, full of things I had not yet seen. The screen lit up with a new message. I told you she deserves to know. She is old enough now. My blood ran cold, not because of the content, but because of the implication. She. Old enough. I entered the most obvious passcode, his birthday. The phone unlocked. The text thread opened. Her name at the top was not some random emoji or initials. It was a simple first name, Kendra. Scrolling up, I saw weeks of messages. Nothing erotic. No sexts. No random late-night photos. This was not a lover. This was a woman talking to the father of her child. Between reminders about school fees and doctor appointments, there were photos, a little girl with deep brown skin and big eyes, 2 uneven puffs on her head, grinning at the camera with a missing front tooth. She looked about 7. She also looked a lot like Terrell. My chest ached. There was no twist here for me, not in the story sense. I had suspected something. The evidence was a straight line, not a surprise. But my body still reacted like it had been tossed into cold water. My fingers trembled around the phone. My breath came shallow. I scrolled more. Months back, there was a message from Kendra. She said that she was tired of being the secret, that their daughter deserved a father who did not treat her like a bill. She said that she had given him enough time to figure it out, but that if he insisted on hiding, she might tell me herself. He had replied asking her not to. He had said that I could not handle it, that I was under stress, that I was delicate. I laughed out loud in the dark room, the sound bitter and sharp. Delicate. I stared at the little girl's face again, the mischief in her eyes, the way her head tilted like she had a joke she was not telling yet. She had done nothing wrong. The intrigue here was not that there was a child. It was that the women had been carrying the weight of the lie while the man kept moving like the truth was optional. My mama called me to the kitchen a few hours later. The sun was up by then, light pushing through the thin curtains, making the cracked linoleum shine in patches. She said that I looked like I had not slept. She handed me a mug of coffee, strong and sweet. I told her about the phone. I told her about the bank statement. I told her about the little girl with 2 puffs and a gap in her smile. She listened, her face shifting through all the expressions I had seen my whole life: anger, sorrow, resignation. She said that I had to talk to him. She did not say leave him. She did not say stay. She said that as long as he was lying, I was not in a real marriage. Her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. I knew she was right. I also knew I was not going to confront him in our apartment, where he could pace and deflect and charm his way out of things. I wanted witnesses. I wanted his family in the room, especially the ones who thought silence was neutral. So I called Miss Denise. I told her that we would be coming over on Sunday. I told her that I needed everyone there. She did not ask why. Her sigh told me she already knew this day was coming. Before Sunday came, I needed one more piece. Not a twist. A confirmation. No matter what Terrell had done, there was a little girl in the middle of all this, and I refused to let my first sight of her be some messy reveal in a crowded living room. On Saturday afternoon, I sat at our small kitchen table, light sliding across the laminate, and stared at the second phone. The last message from Kendra sat at the bottom of the screen. She had sent it 2 days before. She said that their daughter had a school program that afternoon, and she asked if he was coming or if she needed to tell their child another story about why he could not make it. He had not responded. The program's flyer was attached as a photo, elementary school name, address, time. I did not overthink it. I pulled on jeans and a jean jacket, twisted my hair into a low puff, swiped on a little concealer so I did not look as tired as I felt, and left the apartment. The air outside was warm for fall, the sky a soft blue smudged with thin clouds. The city was humming, buses roaring past, kids playing on the sidewalk, someone blasting music from an open car window. The school sat on a side street lined with lanky trees, their leaves just starting to turn. The brick building was old but cared for, the paint bright around the front doors, a mural of kids holding hands across one wall. The parking lot held a scatter of cars, parents hustling kids inside. I parked across the street and sat behind the wheel for a moment, heart pounding hard enough to make my fingertips tingle. I was not here as the main character in some dramatic scene. I was here as a woman trying to do right by another woman and a child who had not chosen any of this. I crossed the street and entered the school. The air inside smelled like crayons and disinfectant and something fried from the cafeteria. The hallway walls were lined with construction paper art projects, lopsided turkeys, colorful leaves, stick figures with crooked smiles. The cafeteria was acting as an auditorium. Folding chairs filled the space, parents and grandparents and siblings settling in, murmuring. A small stage sat at the front, decorated with paper stars. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on a woman sitting halfway up the middle section. Light brown skin. Braids pulled into a high ponytail. Simple gold hoops. She wore a plain black t-shirt and jeans, her posture a mix of pride and attire that felt familiar. A little girl sat next to her, swinging her legs, talking a mile a minute. 2 puffballs on her head. Gap in her smile when she laughed. It was like seeing a younger version of Terrell's face painted onto a smaller, softer canvas. I took a seat a few rows behind them, far enough not to be intrusive, close enough to see. As the kids filed onto the stage in little lines, the room filled with the rustle of plastic chairs and the glow of phone screens held up to record. The music teacher started a medley, and the children sang with that off-key enthusiasm only kids can pull off. The little girl, her name tag read Jada, sang loudest of all, throwing her whole body into the motions. Kendra clapped and laughed, her eyes bright, completely focused on her child. No one else was there for them. I watched that empty space on the other side of Jada and thought about how many empty spaces my own father had left in my life. After the program, parents crowded the stage, kids bouncing with excitement. I stayed back, letting the wave pass. My palms were sweaty, my throat dry. When the crowd thinned, I approached. Kendra was kneeling to fix Jada's coat zipper, her hands gentle and practiced. Jada jabbered about how she did not mess up the words once. I stood a few feet away and waited until Kendra looked up. Her eyes met mine. Confusion flickered there, then wariness. She asked if she could help me, tone polite but firm. I told her my name. I told her I was Terrell's wife. The words hung between us, heavy. Jada's eyes cut to me, then back to her mother, picking up on the tension even if she did not understand it. Kendra's face went through a series of changes so fast I almost missed them: surprise, guilt, anger, resignation. She straightened slowly, her hand resting on Jada's shoulder. She said that this was not the place. I agreed. We walked out together into the parking lot, Jada skipping slightly ahead, humming one of the songs from the program. The sun was bright, casting long shadows on the asphalt. Cars idled, parents loading kids into booster seats. We stopped near a patch of cracked pavement by the far fence. Jada wandered a few feet away, climbing onto the low concrete curb, balancing with her arms out. Kendra crossed her arms over her chest, her jaw set. She asked how much I knew. I told her about the phone. I told her about the bank statement. I told her that I had known there was something wrong for a long time, but that I had not known where to look. Her shoulders dropped, some of the defensiveness melting into exhaustion. She said she had been telling him for years to stop lying. She said she had begged him to step up, not just with money, but with presence. She said she had threatened to come to me, but he had always convinced her it would just make things worse. I asked her how old Jada was. She said 7. I did the math in my head. They had conceived Jada before I married him, but after I had already been in his life. There was overlap. Lines blurred. I did not ask her if she had known about me back then. She answered anyway. She said that when she met him, she only knew him as that fine guy who came to her cousin's cookout and helped her carry chairs. She said he had mentioned an ex, not a current girlfriend. She said by the time she found out, she was already pregnant, and she had been too angry and too ashamed to call me. The situation was messy in every direction. But standing there in that parking lot, watching Jada balance and wobble and steady herself, I knew one thing for sure: the only person who had really had a choice at every turn was Terrell. He was the common denominator in all the half-truths. Kendra looked at me like she was waiting for me to attack her. Instead, I told her I was sorry that he had put her in this position. I told her I was sorry he had made her carry this alone. Her eyes filled with tears. She said she had not expected that. I said that we were both dealing with the same man, just on different sides of the same lie. I did not promise her that I would make him do right. That was not my job, and I was done taking on responsibilities that belonged to someone else. But I did tell her that I was confronting him the next day, in front of his family. She nodded, a slow, weary motion. She said she did not need drama, just clarity. She said she was tired of this secret version of her life, tired of explaining to her daughter why her father was always busy. We exchanged numbers. Not as enemies. Not even as new friends. Just as two women who refused to let a man's choices control every corner of their lives anymore. As I walked back to my car, the sun bright on my face, I felt something settle in me. Not peace. That would come later, maybe. But a sense of direction. There would be no twist waiting for me in Miss Denise's living room on Sunday. No surprised child bursting through the door, no dramatic reveal. I was carrying the truth into that space on purpose. The intrigue now was not about what I would discover. It was about who would stand where when the truth landed. Sunday smelled like every Sunday at Miss Denise's: fried chicken, starch, and secrets. The afternoon sun poured through the thin curtains in her living room, turning the dust in the air into motes of gold. The TV sat dark for once, the usual Sunday game replaced by the weight of what was about to happen. Miss Denise sat in her favorite armchair, a sturdy woman wrapped in a soft house dress, hands folded tightly in her lap. Tiana was perched on the edge of the sagging couch, her phone face down for once, her eyes flicking from me to her brother like she was watching a live show she had been dreading. Terrell sat beside me, his leg bouncing, fingers tapping against his knee. He smelled freshly showered, cologne sitting heavy on his skin, as if he thought he could cover the scent of fear. I held the second phone in my hand. The regular one lay on the coffee table beside a sweating glass of sweet tea. The room hummed with unsaid things. Miss Denise cleared her throat. She said that I had asked for this family meeting, and she asked what needed to be said. Her voice was calm, but the stiffness in her shoulders betrayed her. I took a breath. The air tasted like grease and nerves. I told them I was done guessing. I told them I knew about the bank account. I knew about the child support. I knew about the second phone and the messages and the little girl who sang louder than everyone else on that school stage. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The words themselves were heavy enough. Terrell's leg stopped bouncing. His eyes snapped to the phone in my hand. He said that it was not what I thought. The sentence was so predictable it almost made me laugh. I asked him if I had misunderstood the words child support on the statement, or the picture of his daughter missing a front tooth, or the way he had been sending money quietly instead of sitting me down like a partner and telling me about his past. Tiana looked down at her hands. Miss Denise closed her eyes briefly, like she was bracing herself for a blow she had seen coming for a long time. Terrell's shoulders slumped. He said that he had messed up. He said that he had gotten Kendra pregnant at a time when we were on a break, and he had not known how to tell me when we got back together. He said that at first, he thought he could handle it on his own, that he would get a better job and then tell me from a position that did not make him look broke and irresponsible. He said that time kept passing, and the lie kept getting bigger, and he kept telling himself he would fix it before I found out. He looked at me like he wanted those words to sound noble. They did not. I asked him when he had planned to tell me. At her high school graduation? At our 10th anniversary? In some hospital waiting room years from now? He did not have an answer. Silence settled, thick and buzzing. Then Miss Denise spoke. She said that she had told him from the beginning that he could not keep something like that from his wife. She said she had raised him better than that. Her eyes were on him, but I could hear the guilt in her voice too. I asked her when she had found out. She said that she had known about the child almost from birth. That Kendra's mother had gone to the same church as her cousin and word had gotten around. She said that she had yelled, prayed, cried, done all the things mamas do when they realize their son has grown into the kind of man they were afraid of. She said she had assumed he had told me. I watched her face when she said it. I saw the lie there, or at least the convenient story she told herself. She had assumed. Because assuming meant she did not have to choose between protecting me and protecting her son. Family intrigue is often less about big conspiracies and more about all the ways people avoid saying what would force them to pick a side. I told her gently that her silence had been a choice too. She flinched. Tiana shifted uncomfortably. She said that she had wanted to tell me so many times. She said that every time she saw me washing dishes after Sunday dinner or helping Miss Denise fold laundry, the word sat right behind her teeth. She said that Terrell had asked her not to, that he had said he needed to be the one, that he would handle it. She kept waiting. Years passed. I looked around that living room, at the faded family photos on the walls, at the crocheted blanket draped over the back of the couch, at the dusty silk flowers on the TV stand. So much history in this one cramped space. People liked to say Black families were strong, that we survived everything. We did. But sometimes we survived by burying things that eventually grew anyway, pushing up through cheap carpet and denial. I turned back to Terrell. I told him I was not going to stand here and pretend this was something we could fix with a couple therapy sessions and a few good promises. I told him my problem was not that he had a child. It was that he had made that child a secret. He had made the mother carry that secret. He had made his own mama carry it. He had put all of them, and me, in positions we had not chosen. He opened his mouth, tears in his eyes. He said that he loved me. He said that he was afraid. He said that he did not want to lose me. I believed he loved me, in his way. I believed he was afraid. I also believed he had loved his comfort and his image more. I told him I was not going to stay married to someone who treated honesty as optional. I told him I would not punish Jada for his choices by becoming another grown-up in her life who pretended she was invisible. So I told him what was going to happen. Not a threat. A decision. I said I would be filing for separation. I said we would work out the logistics like adults, with paperwork and schedules and maybe lawyers if it came to that. I said that if he wanted any kind of relationship with me after the dust settled, it would not be as my husband. It would be as Jada's father, doing right by her in a way I could respect. The room swallowed my words. Miss Denise wept quietly, one hand over her mouth. Tiana cried too, mascara smudging under her eyes. Terrell stared at the floor, shoulders shaking. He did not reach for me. Maybe he knew that if he did, I would step back, and he could not bear to feel that recoil. I stood. My legs felt steady. I set the second phone on the coffee table. I told him he could keep it. That the secrets on it were his to deal with now. I walked to the door. Miss Denise caught my arm gently. She said that she was sorry. Not in that vague way people use when they are sorry they got caught in the weather of your pain. She was sorry for herself, for him, for me, for the little girl who would grow up with this story stitched into her understanding of love. I believed her. I also knew her sorrow could not be the thing that decided how I moved. Outside, the air was cool, the sky streaked with late afternoon pink. A car drove by, bass thumping. A kid rode by on a bike with one broken pedal, flip-flops slapping the pavement. I stood on that sagging porch and felt all the threads that had been binding my life in quiet knots, my mama's bitterness at my father, my own fear of being left, my need to be the good woman who made it all work. Terrell's pride. His mama's silence. Tiana's hesitation. Kendra's exhaustion. None of it was a twist. It was all predictable, in a way that made my chest hurt. But standing there, with the late sun warming my face, I realized something simple and powerful. Intrigue did not have to end in me being destroyed. It could end with me walking away. So I did. I moved out of our apartment 2 weeks later, into a small studio with peeling paint and good light. My mama helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs, her breath coming in loud puffs, sweat beading on her forehead. She said that she was proud of me, even if it was not the life she had imagined for me. I told her that I was finally starting to imagine my own life. To my surprise, Kendra texted me sometimes. Not with drama, but with updates. She said that Terrell had started showing up more for Jada, tentatively, clumsily. School pickups. Weekend visits. She said it was not perfect, but it was movement. I did not get involved. That was between them. But on nights when I lay alone in my new bed, the city lights casting their strange patterns on my walls, I took some small comfort in the idea that a little girl who had no say in how she got here was getting at least a piece of what she deserved. Months later, I sat across from Miss Denise at her kitchen table. We had stayed in touch, awkward at first, then easier. She had invited me over, saying that just because I was done with her son did not mean we had to be enemies. The house smelled the same. The living room looked the same. The difference was in the air, clearer, the way it feels after a storm passes through and drags all the dust out of the sky. She said that she had spent too much of her life pretending not to see things. She said she was done with that. She told me things about Terrell's father I had never known. About the way he had dipped in and out, about the promises he had made and broken. I realized that my husband's choices were not a twist either. They were a pattern. But I had broken it. Not perfectly. Not cleanly. But enough. One evening, I met Jada properly for the first time. At a park, neutral ground. She ran up to me, curious eyes wide, and said that her daddy had told her I was his friend. I smiled. I told her that I was someone who cared that her daddy did right by her. She seemed satisfied with that. We sat on a bench while she played. Terrell hovered near the slides, watching, guilt still hanging on him, but lighter now that the truth was out. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the playground. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who thought love meant holding everything together even when it crushed you. I thought about the night I first heard that phone buzz. The bank statement. The school program. The living room where everyone chose their side. There had been no twist. No surprise villain. Just a series of choices, and then my own. I got up from the bench, stretched, and let the cooling air brush against my arms. I felt the ache of betrayal still, but it was softer now, scar tissue instead of open wound. I was still a black woman in a world that loved our resilience more than our rest. Still a daughter of a woman who had survived her own share of lies. But I was also something else. I was a woman who had stepped out of the quiet intrigues of other people's making and into a life where I said what was true, even when my voice shook. No twist. Just me, choosing myself in the full light of day. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.